So, welcome to live chat. Okay, I see stuff popping up here, so that's good. It looks like a lot of viewers have also transferred, so that's really good. So we'll do the reveal very shortly. I'm curious if it will be overwhelming or underwhelming. I apologize if Victor chimes in at some point. His guardian instincts make him want to follow me everywhere unless he's very tired or we've had a busy day, and so he has some anxiety in the house if I'm out front, but eventually he will calm down. But anyways, so getting beyond that, finally the reveal for the front yard. I'm gonna put my carton of orange juice down here, my outdoor hydration. And so here we have my gigantic mulch pile with a work in progress vegetable garden beyond it. We have my front porch pots, Salvia gaurantiaca, some sort of vervain. I really like my spider flower. Oh, there's a monarch. They're everywhere, and there that begins. We've got some hairy balls milkweed here, which is it does work as a monarch host plant. They do recognize it, even though it's an African species. Next to the front porch, we have some Apios americana, which will be very beautiful once it starts blooming in a couple of weeks. Some Salvia farinaceae, more spider flower, a little Helianthus annuus, that common sunflower that I let seed into the pot year after year. This is my more ornamental area, but I have to go through and weed it and tidy it up for the presentation in a couple of weeks. So just kind of look away from that for the moment as we go over to the areas of more interest. So we have my little signage to show that all the crazy stuff is intentional. And over here, this area gets a lot of shade. The yard is, the sunlight can be very strange here. So I have these big trees. Well, I guess they're not, those two are mine. The other couple are Scott's, my next door neighbor. And so this area is basically shade in the morning. The afternoon it gets full sun, and then or early afternoon full sun. Rest of the afternoon shade, and then in the evening we get full sun again, which is some nice dynamic lighting. So out front here we have a matrix of Carex blanda, which is a very common weedy sedge. Produces a bunch of seed, very dryness tolerant, moisture tolerant, and whatnot. So it's a good thing to just sort of have in between other stuff that may or may not go dormant depending on its life history and the weather. Since it's been so dry, some things are going dormant that don't usually. This is moonseed here. This is a nifty native plant. It's one of the, I think it's the northernmost and one of a very small number of members of its family in North America. It's in the same family as I think it's called ayahuasca, the death vine or whatever, the thing that gives you like trippy near-death experiences or whatever. So I like that. It's a really nifty native. It's got these really cool shaped leaves, kind of unique and tropical looking. Beyond that, there's more spring ephemeral things in here, like some bloodroot. This is I really like the website Prairie Nursery, where I get a lot of perennials of certain stuff from. They have good pricing for the quantity of things that you can get. Unfortunately, but also fortunately, this is supposed to be a mixture of red and white baneberry, so that I would have red and white berries through here as sort of a late summer fall interest. They ended up sending me, I think, white baneberry and white cohosh, or what's it called, black cohosh, which is, it's all in the same genus, or at least it used to be, but it's not exactly what I was going for in here, but it will give some more color at a time of year where there's not much color and shade when it starts blooming. So they made a little oopsie, but it's all right. I'm flexible. This is the red or the white baneberry here, which has the really interesting fruits. I will also apologize. I'm not used to keeping up with the live chat here. So if I miss anybody's comments, oh, hello. If I miss anybody's comments, do let me know. How's Victor doing what he's supposed to do? Moving over here, my little bench where the cottonwood seedlings and stuff fall on constantly. And through here was a mixture of Fragaria virginiana, the wild, one of the native wild strawberries, and what I thought was a native jump seed. There's still a little bit of it in here that I have to pull. But I found out that this plant has a weird taxonomic history, and what I had researched it originally and thought that it was native. It was a cultivar of a native species. Turns out it's actually an Asian species. And I'm really trying to go, since this is more of an area where things are allowed to intermingle and seed in and whatnot. I ended up, there was a lot more of it in here, so I ended up spraying most of it with herbicide to kill it. So there's a couple plants I'll probably go through and pull. Well, that's why this isn't as filled in as it could be. So we'll step into here one quick moment. This here is those. Alan, you haven't even seen the main area where it's mostly Fragaria. We'll get there shortly. So this is, I can't remember what species of bone set this is. Genus Eutrochium. I can't remember now. I feel really dumb. It's whatever genus white snakeroot is in, or not white snakeroot. No, I'm mixing up my plants. Bone set, common bone set. This is a endangered or threatened species of bone set. Here, drew from creating sustainable landscapes, placed an order for this a couple of years ago through a native nursery called Feral Flora. We used it in some projects when I was working with him. It hasn't started flowering yet, but it will very soon. So I had to put it in here because it's pretty deer resistant, and of course, as a threatened species, it needs all the homes it can get. You can see this is a dwarf ecotype of ostrich fern. Dwarf, are you able to read chat while streaming from your phone? Yes. Again, I'm kind of just getting used to this whole streaming from the phone, so it's not in my mind's eye to read the chats as they pop up there. So I apologize if I missed anybody's, and I also apologize for Victor's separation anxiety, but he should calm down pretty soon. But anyways, this is a dwarf ecotype of ostrich fern here, and you can tell we had a couple of weeks with no rain and 90-degree days, and it was not very happy with that. So the subsoil here is mostly pure sand. Oh, and I have to do, I got to go on a quick lecture. So we have a friend and a foe here. So this looks like a Chinese mantid nymph, the Tenodera sinensis. And so I do love mantids. I love them a lot, but they are, in Michigan, very destructive, top-tier invertebrate predators. And they will just sit on goldenrod and other plants in the fall and just tear through bumblebees and all kinds of other pollinators. So when I come across mantids in Michigan, I do euthanize them. So I will just be taking a moment to do that. So my apologies to the mantid-loving folks out there. And again, I do love mantids, but here it is not welcome. Perfoliatum, Silphium perfoliatum. We'll actually get over to that. We'll go down the side of the house in a bit. This is a really cool plant that I found out about, I think 2 years ago. This is a hoary skullcap. It's a Scutularia species. It blooms at a time of year where there's not a lot of other things blooming in shade. It's excellent for bumblebee pollinators. It takes quite a bit of dryness. It self-seeds in. And you can see in this area kind of the approach that I've gone for is you have some things that bring color and verticality and some interest that are native. And then you have sort of what's going on at the ground level. So you've got strawberries and sedges that are filling in the spaces and preventing weeds and other things from popping up, and providing habitat for all kinds of things, like carpenter ant or a formica foraging right there. But yeah, Silphium perfoliatum is threatened, I think, in Michigan, and I do have some of it in my yard. We'll wander over here just a little bit. So this area is a lot of this area is a lot of Fragaria virginiana, and I did go through and pick strawberries a couple of weeks ago when they were ripe. There's a mixture of things here. This is a Helianthus. I think it's Helianthus stromosus or maybe Divaricatus. This is Symphyotrichum odoratum, or no, oblongifolium. Symphyotrichum oblongifolium, aromatic aster. It would prefer more sun, but it's good with the dryness here, and it's mixed in with some other things like some echinaceas that are starting to bloom. I think this is, what is this? Carex bignali, this guy right here, which is the sedge that I'm using in this area gets a bit more sun. So instead of using Carex blend, I put in Carex bignali. There's some primroses popping up. This is the Helianthus. Oh no, it's not a Helianthus stromosus. It's a Rudbeckia hirta. So I'm not a purist when it comes to using cultivars of stuff, especially if they come up from seed. And I have a particular soft spot for the tetraploid Rudbeckia hirta variety, the Gloriosa Daisy. It's on my little Kill Your Lawn bumper sticker. So so there is a cultivar of Rudbeckia hirta in here, and I just realized that my deer deterrent is probably still on. This is a 9-bark. I think it's some sort of cultivar that's very close to the wild type. It might be gold nugget or something. It's supposed to be a very deer-resistant plant, but you can see when the deer sneak and don't set off the yard enforcer that they will actually come up and eat this. And this, along with my other ones, were all big, like 6-foot plus tall plants last year. I cut them back this year to refresh them and to sort of open up some of the space. There goes another monarch. There are so many monarchs in our neighborhood with all the plantings that you're guaranteed, once they pop up in the summertime, you're pretty much guaranteed to see one every day at one of the houses here that have the landscaping, because I have it. Scott's got some, other neighbor Karen does, and my other neighbor down the street, Joe, all have plantings like this. And so you're guaranteed to see one monarch per planting some days. I think I saw somebody ask, oh, there's a nice dragonfly. Somebody asked about Heliopsis. There's a little bit of Heliopsis in here. I went through a period of time where I was kind of discouraging it from popping up because it was starting to take over in some spots. Oh look, there's some Monarda blooming there. There's this bed has a lot going on, and it doesn't look like it right now. But in about a month, 3-4 weeks, a bunch of goldenrod in here, Solidago juncea. I think somebody brought that up. There's another species of goldenrod. I can't remember the Latin right now. I think it's rough-leaved goldenrod that's mixed in through here. Pycnanthemums. I've got some Russ aromatica through here. Euthymia, one of the Euthymia species. Golden tops. There's some Culver's root, Veronicastrum. There's the Monarda there. There's some Joe Pye, some ironweed, some Rudbeckia laciniatum, and Retibida pinnata. About mantids, introducing Carolina mantids. From what I understand, Carolina mantids might actually be more arboreal. They may not actually like this type of habitat. So, and they're also a lot smaller than Tenedera, so I don't think it's a good idea to try and introduce one to deal with the other in this situation. So I don't go out looking for them, but if I come across one, then I take actions into my hands. Oh, we have a complex interaction going on here. We have Lygius tursicus here, the true bugs on the flowers. I wonder if can I go back and zoom in, like get good quality. So this is Lygius tursicus, sometimes called the false milkweed bug. which I feel is a really crappy name because it's found on false sunflower, not on something called false milkweed. So I feel like it should be called the false milkweed bug. But only recently I think they've started looking into the differences between this and the small milkweed bug, because they were apparently difficult to tell apart in collections, and it apparently took them a while to do the behavioral life history approach and realize that one feeds on milkweeds almost exclusively and one feeds on Heliopsis almost exclusively. And usually, you know, whoever brought up the Heliopsis helianthoides, it's such a neat plant because it's very weedy, but it's very beautiful. And it just immediately pulls in all this very host-specific wildlife. So you get the Lygeus tursicus, and I don't see it on this one. I think this is the only one out in the front yard. But there is also an aphid that is a specialist on Heliopsis. Actually, if we go down this, we might go down the street and look at Karen and Scott's planting after this. It's another cultivar of 9-bark. I think this is Amber Jubilee. I'm gonna turn this off. I will talk about this eventually. Yep, there we go. So, but this is the main prairie area here, which just becomes, it's starting to get all the color that it has until frost now. So let's see who's hanging out in the butterfly weed here. We've got some bombus, we've got some aphis, we've got maybe a steely blue cricket hunter that just took off. There's an aphis. And again, sorry if I'm missing anybody's comments and questions and whatnot. I'm just sort of, I'm looking over the camera most of the time, or looking over the phone most of the time, but I will start trying to look more at the screen. But I think the honeybees recognize Asclepius because Asclepius is, I believe, only came to North America somewhere between like 15 and 7 million years ago. So something that's an old world species like aphis may recognize some things about this plant innately from having a longer shared history together. Oh, there's a monarch. Can't tell if there's scent marks. Might be a male. Here we have Monarda bradburyiana, which was blooming much more abundantly. Well, it's not blooming right now, but a couple of weeks ago, it's one of the earliest blooming Monardas. We have mixed in with it the what's it called, Prairie or Cowboy Rose. What is that genus? It's in the family Malvaceae. Not Malva. Calero and Volucrata. Wonderful, drought-tolerant native, blooms all summer. Big, wonderful, pretty blooms. They're usually open. Since it's evening, some things are closed up. This is a species or subspecies of Rudbeckia fulgida. That's a more upland variety. I got it from somebody that we did work for when I was working with Drew at creating sustainable landscapes, and just sort of tucked it in here because Rudbeckias are probably one of my favorite native plants. I used to see a monarch. I see one or two in late summer if I am lucky these days. Yeah, if you plant it, they will come, and it's surprising just how little they will recognize as a suitable place to hang out. Pycnanthemum tenuifolium, narrow-leaved mountain mint, very dry tolerant. I do like to respect the things that were already here, so I do incorporate a lot of the weedy asters that were already on the property when I moved in, and just sort of sprinkle them around places. It does become quite a festival of color in the fall when these things that have looked like weeds for a couple months suddenly are covered in all kinds of flowers in September and October. So we're gonna go into the planting now and look at some stuff. These little guys are partridge tree, Chamaecrista fasciata fascicularis. I can't remember which one it is or what the exact Latin is. This is a find that I'm very happy about. This is a species of special concern in Michigan, Solidago missouriensis. This was a find when I was doing work with Drew, and we were in a subdivision that was just put in. They cleared a bunch of intact xeric habitat, and I saw this blooming under a blob of black locust, which is very invasive on cleared lots in Michigan. And I remember taking over to Drew because it was July, and I was like, what is this? And I sat down and keyed it out, and it came out to being this rare species. And I, you know, the only other one that would have been blooming at that time would be Junsia. And I, you know, Drew and I talked about it. He's like, I agree. So now I have this patch of Solidago missouriensis here, and it blooms along with the Junsia over there. Are those strings running through the beds? Strings. I'm not sure what you're talking. Oh, you might be looking at these, the Carex bignali. Flower heads kind of look like strings in certain places. So, this is Asclepias sullivani. I don't think it's very happy here because it's been about the same size for 2 years. This whole planting here is only about 2.5 years old. So it took very little time to get this nice and lushly established. And last year, this was not all strawberries through here. This is all these strawberries moved in within the last year, basically, into this area. More Rebecca. I don't really have a problem with walking through here. Don't do it too often, but it's also so resilient that it doesn't really matter what I disrupt. So here, we have some dogwoods that I put in at the encouragement of an ex, and am now in the process of managing for using as food for my rabbits and guinea pigs. So they're both Cornus, I think they might both be Cornus sericea, which is just different color forms of the red osier dogwood. And this yellow twigged one does not seem to be as popular for food with guinea pigs and rabbits as the red twig one is. So I think I saw a comment on how easy is it to kill your lawn. It's very easy. You just have to you just have to spray it with herbicide on a schedule about 3 times over the growing season, spring, summer, and early fall, to get the whole cast of weeds and other plants that are going to be in there. And then you lay down a seed mix. I recommend, if you have some really cool big plants that you're really fond of, like a silphium or a vernonia or eutrochium, that you buy plugs of those and put them in key places, and then seed and everything around them. So, but it's very easy. And of course, watering the first year is important if you want to get good establishment of things, although it's not entirely necessary depending on how dry your soil is. And whoever brought up getting some ironweed in here, I do have ironweed. I don't use it in this area because most of the species get very tall. But there's, right up against my window is Vernonia fascicularis. This is a hybrid that I found in Indiana, in the center of the picture there. And we will eventually get to the Vernonia, I think it's Mazurka or Gigantea right there. So I do have it through here. It is one of my favorite native plants too, but I have to be a little bit careful and discretionary with where I use it. So you see the dogwoods resprouting. Nothing, cutting those things back completely would not kill them. Some Gaillardia up along the street. This is I think this is a non-native ecotype of white yarrow, so I actually went through and sprayed it a couple of days ago, right before we first got a rain. I went out here and sprayed it. So I'm going to cut all the seed heads, mulch it, and plant something temporary in this spot. This is a little weedy area. I tried some legumes that get hot and dry. Like this is Lupinus perenni, goat's root, Tephrosia virginiana, and I will probably end up sprinkling some Coreopsis tentoria and some other weedy annual things in here this year once I get seeds to bump the color up front here next year. And this milkweed, this is actually, I think this might be threatened or endangered in Michigan. This is Asclepias ovalifolia. I got one little plant from a local nursery and put it down here. I had no idea how big or small it was going to get or stay. It ended up staying very small. I think it might be one of the shortest milkweeds that are native to Michigan. And it started right there, and it apparently behaves like common milkweed, and it decides to spread, which is fine because monarchs do use it. But unfortunately, since I only have one genetically distinct individual, it didn't set fruit. But it did flower profusely a couple of weeks ago. So Solanum carolinense, Carolina horse nettle, kind of a weed in a lot of places, but it does attract a lot of cool native bugs. So it's in here. Some marigolds I threw in for some holes, fill some holes. There's a Coreopsis tinctoria getting ready to bolt and bloom. This is Helianthus occidentalis, western sunflower. It's fairly well behaved and pretty short for a Helianthus, so I have it down here by the street. The deer come and eat it a little bit. That's fine, because then it just pops up another flower stem. Did you have some penstemons this spring? Yes, there's 3 species of penstemon in here. Unfortunately, I didn't have the yard enforcer turned on, and so the deer came and ate the flower stems off of a couple of them. But we can probably see a couple of them as we walk through. Well, I mean, you can see right here, this is a penstemon digitalis that had the flower heads chomped off. So basically, if I don't stop the deer from getting in here early in the season, they will mow a lot of things, including deer resistant things, to the ground, because the forage around here is very poor, and it doesn't matter how much corn and feed people put out for things. They want roughage, and they need the micronutrients that are in greens. So they come through here, and they will devastate everything if I don't keep them away. But by later in the season, when the plants start to develop phytochemicals, and some of the even tasty things start to become unpalatable to them, they will leave stuff alone. So I can usually turn the yard enforcer off later in the season, and then they can come in here and browse a little bit. So, so this is a really cool spot. Along here, they originally did Sporobolus heterolipus, prairie drop seed. It's a native prairie grass. It's threatened or something in Michigan. And I was like, all right, I'll put that there, and there'll be something grassy along the edge, you know, to kind of butt up to my neighbor's lawn. And the Coreopsis tinctoria said, no, I like it here. And I've burned that area and done all kinds of stuff, but because the mulch that I used when I put the Sporobolus in broke down into good soil, it's just rich exposed soil, which is what the prairie Coreopsis really loves. And so it goes crazy over there, which is fine because it's long blooming, it's beautiful, it's native, blah, blah, blah. I could go on and on. There's one, do I want to move over there yet? Maybe not. We'll go look at this Monarda over here first. Monarda fistulosa is cocaine to bumblebees. It's just like their favorite thing. And I've seen, I mean, sometimes wasps will come to this too. It's a great pollinator plant overall, but bumblebees, it's cocaine. And it seems to coincide with when you start getting these big workers emerging in the wild. And so it's just a wonderful plant for them. And occasionally I will see hummingbird hawk moths. Oh, this is a plant that I should weed out of here. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. This is Virginia stickseed. It's a very annoying native plant that usually grows in woodland areas. The seeds are very obnoxious to get tangled on yourself. It was probably dropped over here by a deer or something that scratched or whatever. But I might leave it because it's probably discouraging the deer from getting at my kankakee mallow. Or maybe not. Yeah, maybe. Hopefully I'll get some blooms out of this kankakee mallow. I just have one of these here. I grew it from some seed that I got. It's native to Illinois, Indiana, and it's only found on one little island or something like that, but it's become a very popular garden plant because of that. So I was hoping I could grow some here. The deer really like to eat it, so it's nice that it's sort of tucked away between this distasteful Monarda fistulosa and this is, what is this? Switchgrass, Panicum virginicum. Oh, there's a little katydid. If I can angle this properly, maybe it'll be in focus. We'll just go in. There we go. Maybe a little bit. The camera doesn't want to focus on it. Oh, there it goes. Little conocephalus or neoconocephalus. I can't remember which one's the big genus and which one's the little genus. So, but yeah, all kinds of stuff that's in here with the space. And you can see sun's starting to go down, which is why I wanted to do this sooner in the season when there was stuff than later, because it'll start getting dark earlier. Although I could always do a morning or a afternoon live stream at some point. I have tried American plum. The plants get eaten to the ground here, and the soil is too dry. It's more of a facultative wetland species, but I do have a little choke cherry here, which has to be protected from the deer at all costs. You can see where in the spring on that the left stem there, where it grew above the protective cage and a deer stuck its head over there and ate it, and now it has split into two right there. So moving on into things, more partridge pea. This one's a lot more happy over here because this spot gets full sun pretty consistently. These are the Rudbeckia hirta gloriosa with the yellow and red petals. This is Artemisia ludoviciana, prairie sage. It's what's that group of plants called? Mugworts. It's a native, another threatened prairie species in Michigan, and so I have it sort of just speckled through here. It adds a nice different color amongst the other things. More Asclepias sylvanti. I don't think it's going to bloom. This is a really cool plant that I've really fallen in love with. It's Salvia azurea, prairie sage, and there's more of it just sort of scattered through here as well. It starts blooming in, I think, mid-August and then goes to frost. And another bumblebee cocaine plant. And it's just very beautiful. So it's nice to have a couple of them scattered in here. The partridge peas, which of course just look very ferny and frilly right now, will eventually be covered in yellow blooms. And when you come out here in the morning, because the partridge pea is buzz pollinated by the bumblebees, at least, it will just be like a bunch of buzzing in here from all the bees pollinating the partridge peas. And it really, once those get going, it really does add a lot of color to this space. I mean, it's very colorful right now, but it adds a lot of just overwhelming color. But again, it takes some time for the partridge pea to start blooming. And this is the Coreopsis tinctoria, which I was talking about being on the edges. So that's the flower. So you can see how many flowers these will be producing, and they stay open for quite a while. Just saw a grasshopper. I'm not sure if this is going to be a good year or a bad year for grasshoppers in here. I think last year it was really good, and this year I'm not sure. This spot here, suspiciously empty, but will be filled in with these perennial or annual plants and other things creeping in. This spot here last year was where one of these guys was. Trying to get the whole thing in shot here. This is, is it Cirsium discolor? I feel so bad, horrible and rusty with my Latin on some of the plants. I think it's Cirsium discolor, pasture thistle. So it's one of our native thistles. I can go up and touch that if I want to. It's not going to hurt my hand like a lot of the invasive ones will. Last year there was one of those in this spot, which is why it's bare, because it's a biennial, so it'll live 1 year as a rosette, pop up and flower the next year, and then die. So that's why the space is empty. But obviously with all this other stuff here, something will fill it in, so I don't even care. Some Dahlia purpurea here, purple prairie clover. I think it wants more light and maybe drier conditions. Nyctobolus, I think, 4 o'clock. Sometimes it produces actual flowers and sometimes it doesn't. I'm not sure why it didn't or doesn't this year, but they usually, I guess they also usually flower more towards the morning. This is Erigeron annuus, annual fleabane, and this is probably one of the first plants that I ever cared about. Finding one in a neighbor's yard when I lived with my parents, bringing it home and sort of nursing it. And it was a weed, but it ended up being a very beautiful weed, and it's extremely popular with pollinators. And it also blooms till frost. It's one of the very few native things that starts blooming in like May and then keeps going to frost here. Yes. I was hoping that this guy would be awake. This is Passiflora incarnata. This is one of the eastern United States native passion flowers here. And this has been cold hardy for 3 years. Orientation locked or whatever, there we go. This has been cold hardy for 3 years here. This probably did not break out of the ground until the end of June. This is a very late to break dormancy plant here. And by the end of the summer, this whole thing will just be covered in passion flower vine with some gorgeous otherworldly flowers. And so it's just an excellent native thing. And you know, to be cold hardy here in Michigan is just, you know, it's on a whole other level. Look, you can see more of where the deer have eaten. They may have even eaten the seed heads off of these penstemons here. You ever tried pawpaws? Yes, I have tried eating pawpaws, but for growing in ground here, the soil's just not, it's very well drained and difficult to keep consistently moist. But I will eventually try growing more pawpaws. Flower heads there from a Bouteloua species, Hirsutus maybe, or Gracilis. So there's a matrix through all of this of various other plants, like with the sedges before. And here it is, oh, there's a little plant, oh, and there it goes, little plant hopper laying on my hand. A matrix of Bouteloua, and as of last year when I threw a bunch of seed in here, this is Allium cernuum, nodding wild onion, and so deer resistant, drought resistant, bare soil spots, really favors these bulb forming species. So maybe this year I'll see a couple of flowers. Like if you look at these plants here, these guys are pretty chunky. Some of these other tiny ones, not so much. So maybe see some flowers out of these this year, but if not, again, they take up space. They don't, you know, they play the complex game of resource allotment here and contribute to the biodiversity. So, and they are also edible. Moving onwards. Oh gosh, I do feel horrible stepping on partridge pea, but there's so much of it. Over here, there should be more of it, but the deer hit it so hard in early spring if I don't have the yard enforcer up. This is Silphium laciniatum, compass plant, another one of concern in Michigan. So I have a couple of those scattered through here. This is one of the few non-native things that I allow in here. This is a cultivar of wild carrot of Daucus that has larger purple flowers. So I allow that because Daucus does have some ecological value, and it does provide a little burst of another color that's not very common. You can see this thistle's just going to be covered with flowers this year. We're going to keep walking. And some Liatris aspera, and I think there's another species in here too. I think I mixed two of them together and couldn't remember which one was which that I put in here. So that's more of a late summer. Is that a native thistle? Yes, it is. It's I know the common name. This is horrible for me always wanting to use Latins over commons, but this is pasture thistle. I think it's Cirsium discolor. This is Baptisia alba, cream-colored wild indigo. I think it might be threatened, or very high coefficient of conservatism in Michigan. Bouteloua curtipendula. This is an endangered species in Michigan of grass. It's very weedy here because the conditions are perfect for it, and it makes the perfect filler in between other things. Solidago speciosa, showy goldenrod. This thing is just incredible in the fall with the massive wands of yellow flowers. And this swamp milkweed volunteered in here, so there's a little bit of it in that bed and around the yard and some other places, but this actually popped up as a seedling last year, and it was the most popular pollinator plant in this whole bed last year. And this year, because it's been so dry, the plant's very, very stressed and probably hasn't been able to put any resources into creating flowers and whatnot. It was drooping until, you know, a couple days ago, but not so much this year. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I wonder what this grass is. Really wondering what this looks like. Is that a turf that got in here? We'll just yoink that out. This might be one of the alimus, the native alimus, the like riverbanks wild rye. I have to wait until there's seed heads on it to find out what it is. So hoary vervain, the little purple ones, the stuff here. Alan, the spigelia are in the backyard because that's where there's more shade and more monitored soil. This is flowering spurge. What is this? What is the Latin for this? Oh boy, I can't remember. It's another very dry loving plant. The deer actually ate it to the ground the first year I put it in, which is not supposed to happen. And I think somebody was asking about Silene regia. There is some Silene in here. This might be it here, actually. No, it looks like an aster. I did put it in here. It did flower last year, but it wasn't very happy for some reason. So, and I don't try to fret over things if they're not happy and they drop out. There are a couple of things that I keep an eye on in here, but you know, if I'm not gonna slap two pieces of meat together until something works, you know. So if it wanted to drop out, I just let it drop out of the planting. Although I do use fire to manage some spots and raking and whatnot. This is another volunteer. This is Verbena hostata, blue vervain. It's another wetland plant, and somehow it moved out of this planting and into this one. So I don't care because it's pretty drought tolerant and it's another good pollinator plant. So here's some sort of Monarda that I got from Samson, and I think it might be Smokehole Monarda or something, but I don't think it likes the sun here, and the deer hit it pretty hard in the spring too. So, but the flowers are very pretty, so I will be taking some of that with me when I move. I am trying to do some squash growing in here. Squash vine borer moths hit a lot of the cultivated squashes hard, but in this area, my neighbor down the street, Joe, found that butternut squash seems to be pretty resistant to it, so I planted some butternut squash in here, and it's doing very well with no supplemental water. So just sit down for a second here. You can show off my little vista here. And again, it's very, I think it's very pretty now, but it just gets kicked up to 11 when a lot of those other annuals and stuff start blooming in a couple of weeks. So, but this is my front yard. And we'll continue walking this way. Maybe we'll look over here at a couple things. Because this is older. I started this the year that I moved in. So it's very filled in. Not as many annuals. There's even some woody things that I allow in there. Scrophularia marylandica. There's some Scrophularia in the backyard, but I think it's a bit too sunny out here for it. There's also the other species of Scrophularia that I can't remember what the genus is. So this is a little swale here. There's a couple wetland things that cling to life here. It's a native spirea. I think it's Spirea alba. Inland sea oats. What is that? Spiderwort. What's the genus for Tretoscantia bracteata? Prairie spiderwort. Last year it was beautiful and upright, and this year it flopped from the center. Last year this flopped from the center. This year it's beautiful and upright. I give up. These cacti do really well here. This is Opuntia cespitosa. It's a Michigan genotype too that I got a long time ago when they were clearing a freeway on the other side of the state. Ooh, what's that? Looks like that could be maybe a Brachypterus adult of something, or nope, it's probably a Melanopus differentialis, or I can't remember what the other Melanopus is that kind of looks like that. This will probably be grasshopper paradise in late summer. There's usually tons and tons of grasshoppers. Shall keep going along this way. 9-bark Diablo. This is one of the plants that I saw before I moved into the house and said, oh yeah, I need that in my yard. Very beautiful plant, and you know, cultivars, a lot of insects have trouble eating these purple leaf cultivars of things, which you can look at as a good or a bad thing, but it's helpful because it also discourages the deer, and you know, it's still providing some value with its flowers with the pollen and nectar and structural, and I'm sure there are things that can still feed on it. So I'm not going over the top with it, but it's nice to have something a bit odd amongst a lot of the plant colored things. Let's probably dump this out. So this area is usually just a blob of strawberries and some dill, and trying to grow Silphium cup plant, or not cup plant, prairie dock, Silphium terebinthinaceum. But the deer, again, it's deer resistant when the leaves are big, but early in the season they're very vulnerable, so they hit it so hard. So, but because of the drought and because I don't water out here to conserve water, I use it for my garden. A lot of the strawberries died back a fair amount, but we've gotten a good amount of rain. And then over here, they're very resilient. They'll, in the cool weather in the fall, they will take back over this whole space. But it was actually kind of good that they got back, because it gave me better access to the bare ground, and I put in a couple of Asclepias, what is that, tropical milkweed, which, you know, I know there's the whole thing with the, oh, it's bad for monarchs and the fungal spores and blah blah blah, but I don't go over the top with it. I have a couple of plants here for ornamental value, and the flowers are good for attracting hummingbirds, and it's pretty drought tolerant once established, so I just sort of sprinkle it in here, and it's just a nice little thing along here. And I think my neighbor likes it. He likes hummingbirds, so I try to give him a little something extra to look at over here too. So these are some weeds, air quotes weeds, that popped up last year. This is a woodland tick trefoil, Desmodium. It's not showy trefoil. Another native Desmodium species. This is more swamp milkweed that, again, was a seedling that popped up over here last year and ended up becoming quite at home. So why would I pull it? And this is white snake root. This is a fall bloomer that is extremely deer resistant and likes to fill in holes, and is to some extent perennial. So I just sort of let it do its thing. And some dill. I do grow some dill in here because black swallowtails really like it. This is one of my pride and joys. I have a spot in my yard where all the tick seeds fall that I bring home on my socks. Yeah, sock gardens are fun. I actually have grown a couple of those. Real quick, some sort of dragonfly over here. I don't think it's a common white tail because it doesn't have a white tail. But very, again, just especially in a couple of weeks and after rain, just alive with all kinds of insects, especially in the morning and then again in the evening, depending on how hot it is and how late in the year it is. But it's just, you know, it's just alive with them. 12-spotted skimmer, thank you, some eggs. My friend Joe down the street put in a gigantic swimming pond in the fall, and so it's been dragonfly central over there. There's also been a wonderful lack of mosquitoes anywhere, which is great. Again, this is Vernonia Gigantea mazurka. They're both really big plants, so I've got to look at the number of flowers to key them out to remember what it is. But another really good one with nice purple flowers. Something was here last year and there's nothing here now, which has me kind of suspicious. So I'm sure it'll come to me eventually. This is Virgin's Bower. It's a native clematis, very weedy, but it fills holes nicely and it's very good for pollinators, so I let it run through here. And also very weedy, and well, not as much this year as last year, probably because of the dryness. And also very beautiful and not open right now, of course. This is one of our native morning glories, our native bindweeds. What's the genus? Convolvulus something. It's called swamp bindweed. So it's one of our native ones, and it comes in there. You can be 100% sure if you suck at identifying plants and you find a bindweed that if it has large pink flowers, it's the native one. It also has a white flowered form, but you can be more certain with the pink flowered form. But it opens up to about maybe it's like 3-ish inches across, and blooms from May all the way to frost. So it's nice to have scattered through here. Who am I not seeing in here? There's a couple of plants that sometimes they emerge out of nowhere and make themselves known only when they're flowering. There's a lot of this, I think this here I think is Solidago gigantea. There's also canadensis mixed in here. Oof, excuse me. There's also canadensis mixed amongst the Juncia. They're very weedy plants. I may manage them at some point, but they're deer resistant and they bring a lot of color, and I'm pretty done managing this bed in terms of putting in new stuff. So other than maybe filling a hole like this with something. But there's some hibiscus that pop up through here. There are some swamp roses. You can see the leaves from it there. You might be able to see some of the flowers. It's just going out of bloom right now that are in through here. And I'm pretty sure there's a Joe Pye weed that always surprises me tucked in here somewhere. Like the hibiscuses, I'll see the flowers and be like, oh man, I forgot that existed. And then it will, oh, if you couldn't see it so well, the swamp rose. It's the pink flowers that are tucked away back through there. This is dogbane. I think an Apocynon something in the milkweed family, or maybe they've split them out of that family. This is one that is sort of going for a bit too much of a romp through this planting. And so I might start managing it eventually. It might just burn itself out too, but it's also taken 5 years to do that. So when I planted this, the soil was almost pure sand, no topsoil. Probably had some good nutrient levels, but pure sand, which drains very quickly, does not hold water. And so some of the plants that are in here, wow, just realizing that in the spring I saw a bunch of cutleaf coneflower. It formed a whole monoculture in part of this area, and now the things have grown in. I can't really see it. I mean, you can see a little bit of it starting to bolt to flower over there, but in areas like here, you can't really see it at all with the way the goldenrod is. There's the Joe Pye weed. It's going to bloom eventually. It's going to surprise me right there. Not happy with how much drought that we've had. But it'll be fine. Again, this does not get any water. Neither does this out here. I go around and water pots occasionally of stuff, which leads me to this fellow here. Little pot for something fun is Tweedia cerulean. It's a blue milkweed species that's native to South America. I really like it because the flowers are a true sky blue color. So that'll be, in a couple of weeks, will get quite large, and I'll probably pluck a couple of those seedlings out of there to make space. This is Eutrochium fistulosum. I think it's a species of special concern or threatened in Michigan. It's the big Joe Pye weed. I remember seeing one of these in somebody's yard that was maybe 10 feet tall and maybe 12 feet wide, because it had very moist wetland soil that it was growing in and in part shade. And that was an impressive plant. This one, because of the sun and maybe the genotype, that other one may have been a cultivar. This is the straight wild species. This one gets more upright and not quite as deeply colored flowers. But yes, this is another very impressive plant. I love my Joe Pye weeds a lot. I have Fistulosum purpureum, the one that's in here, the most wetlandy species that's in one of the driest spots is not purpurea, maculatum. And then in the backyard, I've gone, and along the side here, which we'll get to, I've gone very heavy in on using purpureum. For trees, I think this is a black oak. There's also, I think it's Shuford's or something's oak. I haven't bothered to key it out, but it's in that group. American elm. Along the side here, as well as over there, are both American elms, which are not an uncommon tree, but to see good size established trees in a neighborhood that haven't been wiped out by Dutch elm disease is not the most common. So I will be taking some saplings of seedlings I've started from these trees to my future property to plant, because it is Shumard oak sounds about right, or black oak. And then there's also big cottonwoods. Well, we might go and look at Joe's cottonwoods, but Scott has two big cottonwoods, which turn this into a winter wonderland in the summer, because it will just rain cottonwood fluffs. It honestly looked like snow. There were so many fluffs this year, which I do rather enjoy. It's quite magical. Heading off into here, everything here was just kind of very half-heartedly done mulch and other stuff last year. Some things have moved in on their own, like the strawberries and the wild ground cherries, and some things I planted in here, like this fox, because this area has very compacted soil that's also fairly rich. You can see a little bit. This is the American elm trying to grow back. This is Aurelia racemosa spikenard, one of our largest herbaceous plants, at least shade herbaceous plants. I leave some hostas tucked in there because they are edible and do bring a little bit more color to this space. This is Helianthus divaricatus, which is usually deer candy, but with the yard enforcer there and the general lushness and closed offness of this area, they've stayed away from here. And so this divaricatus is getting very, very large, very happy. This will be quite beautiful in a couple of weeks when it flowers. You can see a gall here that might be formed by one of the true fruit flies feeding on the center of the stem. They're really cool little yellow fruit flies. I might do they're not like Drosophila, but they're called fruit flies still. Might do a blog post on that eventually. And some native genotype Heolol Prunella vulgaris here, which is a pretty nifty plant for shade, settable to humans, host to a couple things, good for bumblebees and whatnot. On this ridge, it's pretty weedy because my neighbor, when he mows back here, he will nick it with the edge of the wheel or whatever. But this plant is plantain, which is a native plantain, tolerates a good amount of soil compaction in diverse conditions. It's a nice, and it's also edible. So I push them in a little bit, and then they'll start to seed in and make a more reliable berm here to hold the soil together, to also prevent the water from being sent over here. Since we had discussed, I had offered to help him manage some of the water problems here, which he politely declined, which is fine, because I had some water getting into the basement. So instead of being bare earth, now it's a bunch of plants sucking the water up and sending it into the atmosphere. And so now I don't have that problem anymore. Right there's my bedroom window. Scandalous. And outside of that, this guy, which I planted, this is a prickly ash. It was a Xanthoxylum something, I think. It's one of our native citrus plants, and it's a host for the giant swallowtail butterfly. And it does quite well with a fair amount of shade. Soil moisture is just perfect for it over here. I do like the spines quite a bit. And it will eventually grow and give me a little bit more privacy to my bedroom window. There used to be like a mulberry over here, and the roots are running into the foundation and causing all kinds of problems because mulberry roots are evil. At least white mulberry roots are evil. And there was like a privet bush that was mostly twigs, and it was ugly. So I put this here. This will eventually give me some more privacy and whatnot. Oh, who we got on? Closely related to it. The yellow one that might be causing the galls on these divaricatus. Well, this is a pretty cool one. I think somebody I talked to actually managed to breed those, because that species breeds on like rotting organic matter. So another hosta, backup emergency food reserves, more Aurelias, which I have eaten the berries of the Aurelias and not died, and I might lean into that heavily as a late season food source. And now we get to the monster Prairie. This here is this is a shade species of spiderwort that was actually here before I moved into the house. So somebody had planted it. I can't remember what species it is. It's not Bracteata, it's not Ohiensis, and it's not that other, it's not Virginicus or Virginica. So it's a shade species of spiderwort. And somebody said cucumbers. This is why are all these Latin names skipping my head right now? What is it? It is in the Cucurbitaceae. Why is this slipping my head right now? Echinocystis lobata. It produces a little loofah seed pod thing, and there's more of the Virgin's Bower clematis. I will go over and tend to that one at this moment. So yes, this is a native wild cucumber species vining up the fence here, along with a couple of other things which I will touch on. Some impatiens pallida, palins, yellow impatiens, some common milkweed that is here for a meme. It was over there and decided to move into here. Variegated lizard's tail, which is a native species, and I put it over here because I had nowhere else for it that could accommodate its needs, and I liked it too much. This here with the 3 leaves is hog peanut, which is surprisingly annual native legume edible. Some other things filling in here, which was in full bloom a couple of weeks ago, is Mihania cordata. This is Appalachian native equivalent of creeping Charlie, which is a very common yard weed, lawn weed. And the flowers on this is about 4 or 5 times the size of creeping Charlie's flowers, and of course it is more native than creeping Charlie. It's become very happy here, and I like that it's working its way through here and suppressing other things. So again, we'll look at the monster prairie here. This is Dutchman's pipe, Aristolochia durior or macrophylla, whatever they're calling it now, which was just a little teeny tiny thing last year, and as Aristolochia tend to do, they will grow very rapidly. And it is actually the thing that I originally intended to be covering the screening fence. The deer surprisingly ate it last year, and it either plant learned or was able to, or was more established in the spot and not a sensitive nursery plant, and now has its full phytochemical suite going on. And so hopefully, I mean, I don't know if I'll be here, but you know, this can take over the whole fence here and provide screening and a host plant for the pipevine swallowtail butterfly. So this is an area that I put a bunch of plugs and work into last year. Some of these things have just been, let's see how I can get the focus. There we go. Some of these things have just been waiting in very small form here. But since I have that garden tour coming up and I wanted this area to be complete by this year, I did put some 12-12-12 fertilizer down during the growing season last year, which you can really tell how happy some of these things are. So we've got some Rudbeckia laciniatum, cutleaf coneflower here, which will be blooming very soon. There's some pokeweed, which is native, Phytolacca americana, excellent plant for birds and a host plant for the great leopard moth. This here is a native species of wild lettuce, Lactuca, I can't remember. There are a couple in Michigan, and I think this might be tall wild lettuce here, which is actually edible early in the season before it becomes bitter. So I like letting that seed around. Bunch more impatiens growing through here. Some asters, these kind of very spindly looking things. Here is one of the asters that was already here when I moved in. Some more Asclepias syriaca, just that was already here when I got here. And this is, of course, the Silphium perfoliatum here, which were just little plants hugging the ground last year, and now this year are monsters getting ready to flower, and oh boy, are they going to look good. So down the fence is all that. You can kind of see a little bit the Eutrochium fistula, or not fistulosum, Eutrochium purpureum, the what is the common name for that? Sweet Joe Pie weed, which is part of one of the other forbs that I went very heavily on in here, which the other one being Vernonia gigantea, that ironweed. But there's not a lot of sun here for ironweed. Ironweed likes a lot of sun, and this species of Joe Pie will take quite a bit of shade, and so the ironweed is not very happy. You can see there's one of the giganteas there. It might also just be a slower to establish plant. This is something that self-sowed in here, and I have a lot of in one of the other beds in the front yard. This is Agastache not Nepetoides, Scrophulariafolia. So this is a hyssop, one of the native hyssops, and that's seeded in here from somehow from one of the other plantings. So, and to get a little bit of a different color in here, you can't see them from this angle, but I have some pots that I planted some Tithonia in, which is the wild Mexican torch that gets about 8 feet tall with screaming orange flowers. So those are also in here, so that the impression is over the little picket fence where I do a lot of my propagation. And if you look into there, you know, you've got this big, busy prairie thing going on when you're looking from the back porch. Eventually I will do a tour of the backyard, but I have mulch to spread and other projects to do first. So with that, I think I will wrap up by doing just a quick walk down the street. Victor's not going to appreciate that much. Oh, I'll talk about this plant first. This is Mentha canadensis. This is one of our I think our only North America, which genetic analysis apparently says that Mentha canadensis was formed by ancient hybridization of 2 old world species of mint. And in my opinion, all the Mentha species, you know, all the weedy garden ones, peppermint, spearmint, etc., they all have very high ecological value. So it doesn't matter if you plant Mentha canadensis or one of the other ones, they will still be providing very high ecological value. All those things that recognize the native one recognize all those other ones too. So, but I like it because I feel like it has the sweetest and best well-balanced smell and flavor of all the mint species. So, oh yeah. So in this planting, the big main old planting, I had that riverbank wild rye, the Alimus species. This is almost certainly one, which makes me think that the big one that is this big thing popping up in the center here is, oh, there goes the monarch, that this is probably that Alimus species as well. So, so yeah, I'll do a quick little panorama of the yard, and we'll do a quick run over to check out Scott and Karen's plantings. So you can see my beautiful 30 yards of mulch that need to be moved by August 1st is the time frame I've imposed on myself. And the big planting here, which of course is not very exciting, but you know, we can thank this Heliopsis for doing its best to give a little bit of color in here right now. So yeah, we'll take a quick walk on over to neighbors' plantings here. So I guess in the quick downtime, any question? Oh, like, gosh, I guess I should talk about this. So this area gets full shade constantly. So this is a full-on shade planting here. Bottle brush grass, Alimus hystrix, I think. Eurybia macrophylla. It's used to be in the same genus as other asters. Big leaf aster. There's, what is that? I want to say that's what is that? Germander, American Canada Germander, Tucrium canadense. This rough-leaf goldenrod was doing very well here for many years, and this year just seems to just not be able to keep up with the leaf litter accumulation. So another one of these wild lettuces. I want to say this is Lacteca floridana, blue wild lettuce, which is, I think, endangered in Michigan. I received my plant a couple years ago from wood thrush natives, who's somewhere in the Appalachian area, and I was just like, well, it's gone. And then this year I've seen all the rosettes have been bolting, and it's like, okay, cool, it's still here. New England aster, Symphyotrichum nova anglii, that is growing in shade and dry soil. Pachyra aurea, which usually has golden groundsel, has yellow gold flowers in the spring. This bed has a lot of spring color because that's when a lot of things in full shade bloom. Zizia aurea, golden alexanders, more of the agastache, Scrophulariafolia. I am going to probably pull or cut a lot of it that's on the edge here, although it does deter the deer from going after some things like this heath aster here. I think it's Symphyotrichum Ericoides, maybe? Couple of other things mixed in here. This is blue woods aster, Symphyotrichum. Symphyotrichum something. Blue wood aster. Can't remember. Some more of this, the skullcap Scutularia just starting to get going here. Anise scented goldenrod. It's not a very common goldenrod. This here is actually my chronological garden. You start over here where the hepaticas bloom first in the year. Then you go over to the woodland phlox, and then you go over to the, well, not very happy this year, but the hairy woodmint. Then you get the Scutularia, the hoary skullcap, the anise-scented goldenrod, and then the blue wood aster. And they have bloom times that overlap by a couple of days. So usually when one ends, the next will start. So we're kind of halfway through summer. Kind of sucks. Anyway, so then there's just a bunch of other random woodland things in here. Blue stem goldenrod, which will bloom in the fall. More of the sweet Joe pieweed, Eutrochium purpureum, some wild columbine mixed in through here. Bunch of sedges. I leave the Oxalis stricta, or there's another species, Delenii. I leave this in here because it's native and it just fills at times where other things are not really as inclined to grow. A couple of Monarda Clinopodia, shade Monarda. Have that growing in here, some pen sedge, Carex pennsylvanica, maybe Carex blanda over here. And then this is an area that I help manage for Scott. We did a combination of some things from plugs and some things from seeds. And the soil, since we didn't use mulch, was kind of depleted, and we're slowly soil building to make it more conducive to native wildflowers. So there's some Mentha canadensis and some more of the Joe pieweed, a lot of white yarrow, which is pretty adaptable, a lot of violets, which I moved out of his lawn area and into the bed so that they could actually grow and thrive. Wild Geranium maculatum. So he's been quite content with it. Gives, no do it or anything. So we will, not like it's a big issue, but and so I will admit at times I get a little jealous of their plantings because it's full sun over here. Even if the soil is crappier and drier, it's full sun, and a lot of these plants came up from seed, so they're very from seed mixes for arid areas or drier areas, so they're very well adapted. So here, I'll get ready for the big reveal. So this is a planting for two of my other neighbors over here. So we got a couple of the Daucus in there too, more of the Elymus, some hoary verbena stricta. This is a really weird looking Heliopsis that has these smaller than usual flowers. I actually feel kind of weird about it because I'm used to seeing them so much larger. Some Asclepias syriaca in there, a couple other things. This is what is this called? It's like a plant, something plantain leaved something, it's not Cynoglossum, but it's a pretty big plant. It didn't really like the dry bout that we went through. Some rosinweed, another Silphium integrifolium that came up from seed. So there's another monarch going through there, and that's a different monarch than the one that was over at my house. So here's some Monarda fistulosa that hasn't started blooming yet. So they have their little, Karen has her little wildflower planting sign over here as well. And this area, as the leaf litter has accumulated, it's sort of stopped some things like the Plains Coreopsis from germinating, and there weren't any perennials here to sort of push it up and emerge through it. So it's kind of bare right now. This is, I didn't see much of this in my planting this year. This is, it's another spurge. What is it called? It's called Snow on the Mountain. Snow on the Mountain is the common name. I can't remember what the Latin is for it. but it's native further west of Michigan, but it attracts a lot of pollinators and it fills in these holes and dry spots well. So the plan for this area next year is probably going to be raking the leaf litter off in the fall or burning it to the soil, and that will encourage a big flush of annual stuff to pop up in here and actually get some germination to fill the hole. It's a little too late for that, and these snow on the mountains will fill this spot in as they will all start to branch out and pop in with the color of the bracts. So these leaves will turn whitish, and the actual flowers will be supported by white bracts underneath them. So it will just have a bunch of white and this powdery green color for pretty much all summer and into the fall, because the bracts will retain their color even after the flowers are done. Like a poinsettia, how the flowers, the little yellow things in the center, and the bracts are the red material around it. So it's very dry, very rocky soil in here. It's been a big project to get things well established in through here and to cut back on the amount of foxtail grass and whatnot. You can see here's Rebecca Hertas. No, there's no Helianthus mollis here. And you can see here, let the nice watch, make sure I don't get run over. It's just a boom of color already in here. Since a lot of Karen and Scott's planting was from seeds, a couple of things are plugs that I put in, like these tuberosa, to get some good upfront color. Since a lot of things were from seeds and not from plugs, they didn't have as tight of a control over some of the color timing and whatnot as I do in my planting. Like I have a lot more asters and whatnot, which are also deer candy, and the deer really like to come through here. But fortunately, because of the full sun, a lot of this stuff is very resistant to the deer browsing it, which is good. And it forces that the evolution of that dynamic between the deer and the things that they're feeding on, which is how the world's supposed to work. So white yarrow is just starting to peter out on its bloom time. This year had kind of a weird staggered bloom with a lot of this stuff. Last year at this time, it, for some reason, maybe because of how late our spring was last year, it all started blooming at the same time. So you had the yarrow in peak bloom along with the butterfly weed, along with the hoary vervain and whatnot. But can't complain. It's still really lush with color. So the houses here were all put in 3-4 years ago, and they dug out all the sand. Oh, look, there's a rabbit in the annual garden over there. They dug out all of the foundation and just poured the raw sand all over here. Some of these areas are just like dumping grounds for like rocks and glass and stuff. And so this soil is basically rocks and glass and sand and stuff over here. So very fortunate to have gotten some things established over the years. Sprobolus, heterolopus, more of the spurge along here, the most disturbed area where Karen occasionally runs over with her car tire, which is fine. A lot of foxtail grass along the edge there, which I actually took I took flame weed or two and burned a couple of days ago. So she originally wanted this to, the original wildflower bed sort of did an L here and went along the fence and whatnot. And she wanted to do more lawn, and she's slowly deciding she wants less and less and less lawn, which is great. But last year we had basically designed this square here to be a native grass lawn with different species of Bouteloua. And I was telling her, I don't know how it's going to work, and we got to manage it and all this stuff, and I'll do my best and try and do that to get you a nice dry resistant lawn. And so this year, after the Bouteloua and whatnot was established, her and I went through here, and she looked at stuff and said, "Are those all weeds at the plants that were here?" And I told her, "No, those are all black-eyed Susans." And she was just like, "Those are all black-eyed Susans?" Like, yeah. And next year, this whole area could be all black-eyed Susans. And she decided that she no longer wanted a lawn here. She wants it to be an extension of the pollinator planting, of the, the wild area. And so just like that, this whole big zone is now going to be more insect and animal habitat through here with native plantings. And she did come through and mow a little bit, to avoiding the black-eyed Susans and spots. It's just, just let her do it, and the grass can take it. And next year, this will probably be just a gigantic blob of black-eyed Susans all through here. I'm gonna put a couple other annual things in. Eventually the perennials will creep in and seed in, but it'll be really cool to have this just be a big blob of more color next year, and be quite the eye catcher. So looking at the dry area here, for plants, what we got going on here. This is an interesting habit on this Bouteloua critipendula here. It's not quite very critipendulous. Asclepias verticillata, whorled milkweed, very weedy milkweed, that will be blooming eventually, very dry tolerant. More Salvia azurea here, more Solidago speciosa, more of the Liatris scattered through here. Solidago rigida, flat top, or stiff goldenrod here, very, very dry tolerant. So this area gets a lot of color later in summer and all through fall. Right now it's a little wanting, although we also have Monarda punctata, which there's still a little bit of in my planting, but it's slowly getting pushed out by things that are more acclimated to the improvements in the soil. But so it's got a nice little bastion here though. Excellent pollinator plant. Favorite of steely blue cricket hunters and other important wasps. There's Silphium laciniatum here. Coreopsis lanceolata, sand coreopsis. Some egg says, do you happen to know if you were to remove long via glyphosate near small trees, would it harm the trees? I figured it would be fine, but just wondered. Glyphosate has to be taken up through the leaves so you can use it around the bases of trees and even get it on the trunk and it'll be fine. So I would not worry about that at all. Echinacea purpurea, that's just starting to get going. More Monarda fistulosa. This is Heliopsis maximiliani, Maximilian sunflower. Usually the deer destroy this thing, but they have not been coming through here quite as frequently as they used to. I'm wondering if Victor might have played a role in that. So, but this is a gorgeous plant that will just be 6 feet tall and the entire stem smothered in gigantic sunflowers in September and October. It's just wonderful. We have many cool native sunflowers in Michigan, just in the United States in general. Very underutilized. Some of them are very weedy, like tuberosus. But that's fine in some scenarios. I have some patches of tuberosus in the backyard that I'm using to see which one will give me the best yields around here. Asclepias speciosa might have some intrusion of Sullivantine genetics. They've been propagating a lot of these things for sale over the... Oh, hello. Oh, I'm sorry. Did we disturb you? So here you go, everybody. Here's on live video evidence of nature. Nature is healing, everybody. Just I'm sorry. I'm gonna have. I want to keep going. Yep. There you go. So yeah, it really helps tie it all together. You get these big native wildflower plantings, and you get the nature in it. And unlike a lawn, they can actually do things like raise babies and find food and be a functional part of the ecosystem and not destroy plants that we're trying to grow for other reasons, like for crops or for ornamental purposes. So yeah, anyways, I think this is more Solidago juntia here. I think the fact that it's getting ready to bloom is good evidence to that. More echinacea tucked away in there. Agastache funiculum. This is a very popular plant. It has very nice smelling leaves, very long bloom time, very pretty flowers with the subtending. I think they might be bracts in that as well. There was more of it in my planting earlier this year, but one of the plants was destroyed by 4-line plant bugs, which again is fine. Oh, another praying mantis. Sorry, chat. One of them was destroyed by 4-line plant bugs, and the other one seems like it's coming to the end of its life. So, but it's fine. Again, that's just how it is. These are not just gardens; they're dynamic ecosystems, so they will change over time. And it's, you know, up to the people who are managing them to decide what trajectory they want them to go in. Some more of the Artemisia ludoviciana that I snuck into here. Karen used to live in Colorado, and she often pines about missing sort of the wild features of Colorado. And so I've tried to sneak in some of these plants that have more common members of the genre or families in Colorado. So like the Artemisia. This thing last year, because of how much rain we got in the spring, this big old Monarda fistulosa got like just flopped over entirely. It looked awful because it fell over sideways and it was about half the size. And this year, because it's been drier and the plant's more established and what have you, it's looking really good. This is the diner right here. And you can even go and get a little specialty sip on the Echinacea purpurea if you want to, you know. So at the back there is Ratibida pinnata. It's a very dry tolerant not cutleaf coneflower, green-headed, pale-headed coneflower. I mix up the common names on those and a couple of other ones. Here we have a challenge for, I think, some eggs. You've been really popping off with the plant IDs and suggestions. Try and ID this. I know what it is. And actually, I think I misspoke a common name back in my yard, or a Latin name back in my yard. But some eggs, if you're still here, or if anybody wants to give this a go, try and identify this plant right here. Get a good eyeball of it, think about it. If you're even still here. If not, I'll start moving and we can always come back if you pop up with a statement. This is horseweed, Corniza canadensis. It's native. It's a ridiculous weed that everybody has seen at some point in their life if you live in the United States. And I have been managing it in here, but sometimes it slips my watchful gaze, and it'll be pushed out eventually, so I don't go fanatically after every single one of them. So it's native, so it's welcome in some capacity. It is not a helianthus. This is, and not a eupatorium either. This is, and again, this is why I said I think I said the wrong Latin name. Yes. So earlier I called something Solidago gigantea. The common name for that goldenrod that I talked about before is giant goldenrod. The Latin is Solidago altissima. This is Solidago gigantea, which is smaller than giant goldenrod. The common name is late goldenrod. So this is usually one of the later goldenrods to flower, although it can overlap with all kinds of other stuff. It's not a very good common name, but I have noticed that it does tend to bloom later than other goldenrods. And so this was a local find at a local park. I think I pulled one plant out about this size and threw it in here 2 years ago, and it's turned into this nice sizable patch. But if you look at the diversity of just the goldenrod in this planting, you have Solidago juncea, you have Solidago rigida, Solidago speciosa, Solidago, was there another one? Juncea, rigida, speciosa, and now gigantea. At least 4 species of goldenrod here. And then in my yard, with the shade ones, some of the stuff I have in the back, I think the whole neighborhood's probably got about 12 or 13 species of Solidago in it. So last year, this was a problem area because it was another bear place. And so I ended up throwing some plugs in here. I ended up throwing some seeds in here just to try and get something in. And one of the things that took is this Ratibida. Can't remember what species of Ratibida this is. Also called Mexican hats. Very beautiful. Not native to Michigan, but it's
native to North America, and it's recognized by all the things in Michigan that use Retibita pinnata, so it gets a pass. It's got red flowers and something aesthetic here. Another Asclepias speciosa showy milkweed. There's a Vernonia gigantea there looking a bit happier than some of the ones at my house were looking, so maybe that'll pop some more color in here. Echinacea, just again, some of it starting to go, some of it is just getting going. There's also Echinacea pallida in here. It's not as common. Speak of the devil, there's one right here. So this is Echinacea pallida. You can see how the petals droop and are a different color than on, well, this one's not all the way open, but then on this purpurea here. So Solidago ohioensis mixed in here. There's a clump of Bouteloua, Bouteloua curtipendula. This Bouteloua mix here is curtipendula, a couple types of gracilis, and I think maybe some hirsutus, just to try and find the best combination that would stick. And if Karen had let it to continue growing in the places where she mowed, it would look a lot fuller and a lot taller like that. But again, I think this is an area she just kind of wanted to clear it out a touch, since it was mostly grassy. But if the city had asked, they already know about all the stuff going on, so they'd just be like, okay, yeah, whatever, you guys are crazy. So moving off over to here into sort of the end of things, because this is where her downspouts are, and I have to I am in charge of rerouting the downspouts, and we'll be getting to that eventually. um, Here's another euthymia. Maybe. All right, so this is the flowers to that Anisis of the Agassicae funiculum. You can see that it's got a long bloom season ahead of it with all those ones that haven't started yet. So, and then Karen has some ornamental beds and stuff that I manage. Some beds that this one we just put in this year. It has a mix of some native and non-native things in it. Oh, there's the rabbit. And so, because she's very done with her lawn, you can see the area that's more of the rye and fescue over there, which is the mix that the contractors threw down when they put the house in. And you can see the areas that are hotter and drier, which look greener right now, because that's pretty much all crabgrass. So she's kind of, she wants a lawn, but she's kind of done with it. This is not the year for lawns. Everybody's lawns are looking burnt out in Michigan. It's only barely into July, so I can only imagine what things are going to look like in August. Meanwhile, the second we get another rain, all the Bouteloua will start growing back profusely and end up looking like that, or taller, nice, lush, and green, and filled in over here. So, yeah. So I think I'll just hold it right here for a moment and see if anybody has any questions or comments on things as we wrap stuff up. I'm excited that I decided to do this today, because I wasn't sure if this would work out with the phone and stuff like that, but it worked really well, and I think it will be worth a revisit in a couple of weeks, and perhaps at a different time of day too, because on a nice morning when that front area is in full bloom, like right around my birthday, right around August 4th, it's really is a paradise with all the birds and all the bugs. There's just hummingbirds everywhere and butterflies everywhere. It's just really, really wonderful right around that time. I mean, it's wonderful, all year, but especially around that time of year. So if anybody has any other questions or comments about stuff, in fact, actually, I'm gonna see if I can talk to Scott and see if this area here, he usually mows, and I know he wants more of this stuff done. I'm wondering if maybe if I talk to him, if maybe we could kill the lawn there, and he could just park on basically a patch of prairie, because whenever he's not parking on it with his work stuff, then it would just be looking like this. And who cares if a couple of Rebecca Hertas get knocked over when you're parking your car? Like they're weed. They are not going to care if they get parked on occasionally. They're just going to keep on keeping on. such an awesome plant. So, Russ, I saw that you commented. Yes, I hope to have another one, maybe around August 4th, because it'll be, things will look a lot different. Things like some color will be gone. The Asclepias tuberosa, there might be a few straggling flowers. There will be new faces, and the partridge pea will be blooming then and bring a burst of color. Usually around my birthday is when the first passion flowers start to pop up, and those will go until frost. And yeah, it'll be a whole different world around then. So let me see. Actually, I guess I have a pop-up chat viewing option, live chat. It's kind of weird. Thank you for the tour, etc. Oh, I can scroll up through this. I'm just now figuring out that I can scroll up through the chat thing. So yeah. So thanks everybody who tuned in for this. I hope that gave you a little bit of an insight into what I do when I'm not doing bug stuff, basically. And any questions about how to do this yourself and whatnot are welcome. And I see Joe walking to his garage over there. Sometime, perhaps when we do the other, maybe we could do a big old long live stream. But sometime, perhaps when I do the other one and do a big long live stream, Joe would have us over and we could see his pond. He's doing a lot of permaculture things with things like taro and sweet potatoes and Hugo mounds and whatnot. And it's been a big learning process for both of us. So like yesterday I was over there and there was something he wasn't expecting to seed in that seeded in, and we were both sort of admiring it. So things like that. I'll ask him and see if we could come over and do that maybe next time and do a big long super live stream with this stuff. So but anyways, again, thanks everybody for joining us, and for those who are watching this not live, again, there will be another one. So if you have any questions, and you're free to reach out via email and ask me about, how to kill your lawn and where to get seeds and what to pick and whatnot, because there are a lot of resources available right now for all of that online and other places too, and I can contribute some of my experience. We ground up not just with the planting stuff to attract different things, and making it look attractive, but in addition to things such as dealing with your local city and perceptions in your neighborhood and whatnot, which is also, it's half the battle sometimes for some people. So with that being said, thanks everybody for joining in. Does native planting help roaches? Not any of our native roaches, but Ectobius pallidus does seem to benefit from these plantings a little bit. They're more of a species of like oak forests and buckthorn barrens, but I do see them occasionally on flowers and whatnot, so I guess they are pollinating. So anyways, thanks for joining everybody, and with that being said, forgot I can't tilt my phone. I'll see you all next week, and may your cultures be ever bountiful. May your cultures and gardens be ever bountiful. There we go.